This will begin the second part of how to use a mobile kitchen, dishwasher, trailers, temporary kitchen facilities, and modular kitchen buildings during the construction of an existing facility renovation or expansion. In the last video, we talked a little bit about the health department permit. We secure all the health department permits for our customers for a fee, of course, or the customer can go ahead and get the permit on their own. We find that in states or in cities and states where there's a high density population, that the health permit process is a little bit more detailed because the CDC, which is the Center of Disease Control, is head over the environmental health department, and there's a more pressure when you have a more dense population. And just for information, when you have 3 or more people that become ill due to a food related sickness, this is known in the industry as a food-borne outbreak. So that means that, now the CDC gets involved. So therefore, this is my reasoning, and this is the reason why I believe that it's in some cities they're more strict. But also when you have situations where you have population, at-risk population, with like children under a certain age, elementary schools and schools, that's an at-risk population, or elderly people over a certain age with immune systems that are more vulnerable. The environmental health departments are normally stricter, or there may be some other layer or organization that's involved, but they will then at that point really look at the food service operation with more scrutiny. So to obtain the health department permits, they require site plan, plot plan, SOPs, which are the standard operating procedure. They're going to want that on the letterhead of the certified food manager. In other words, I can't put it on my letterhead, Temporary Kitchens, and submit it to the health department and sign it. They're going to want that from the operator's food service manager, because he's the one that's responsible, and no one else can control him and make him work outside his guidelines of food and safety. They're going to want the finish schedules. I talked a little bit about, briefly about finish schedules. You wouldn't be able to have wooden floors because wooden floors are porous, and porous would allow for bacteria and other microorganisms to settle inside cracks and pores. So that's why they want wipeable walls and non-porous flooring. And in many towns, they do have a list of approved finishes. So I've been in just about every city and county in the United States. So I would probably say that I'm one of the, well, if not the premier expert in temporary kitchens, temporary kitchen health permit expedition. Let's take a look at what is the first thing an assisted living, hospital, food service operation school does when they are affected with a fire or flood. The first step that I recommend if your kitchen has caught on fire, or you're a victim of a flood, that you reach out to a public adjuster. Now, many people don't know what a public adjuster. He's licensed by the state in which he resides in or does business in, and with he can put together an invoice, and that invoice, and if he's able to substantiate what is on that invoice, and that invoice will normally stand. Of course, the insurance company is going to come back at him and want more specific details. If you've had a fire, and normally you're going to have these people at your doorstep. They're only permitted to be at your doorstep during certain hours, unlike, well, in this state that I'm in, they're limited on that, on the hours in which they can solicit. But if there's a fire, you can guarantee you're going to hear from a public adjuster. These people I would recommend using, because they're able to expedite the process. So the second step would be to secure a specialty emergency contractor. There's companies out there, I believe one of them is ServPro, and there's other national companies out there that specialize in emergency services. And it's very important that you understand that the emergency process needs to be started right away, as soon as possible. The first step is going to be hiring an environmentalist, either whether that's your contractor that recommends one, but an environmentalist comes and takes samples of the building materials. Indoor, you can just Google one, and also in some circumstances, and a lot of circumstances, they can be paid to oversee the cleanup, because then it's kind of on them, meaning that they take some, if not all, of the responsibility in the way that the materials handled and discarded. They may not share in all, but they know the rules. They know how the equipment, how the material is supposed to be removed. So you wonder, like, okay, you just had a fire and you want to just obviously get rid of all of the charred material and remove all of the odor molecules from the site, because these fumes can make neighbors and residents and workers sick because of the fumes. It's much like construction dust affects people in different ways, especially the at-risk population. So you can't really do that until you have an environmentalist come and make sure that there's no asbestos in the material or other hazardous materials that would affect the cleanup. And okay, say you there's a fire. Of course, there's going to be water on the walls and dry walls, and walls are highly hydroscopic, meaning that they absorb a lot of water. So these things may not have been molded before the fire, but some days out they could get molded. And when the mold is disturbed, that's when it becomes airborne. So the use of HEPA filters, and HEPA filter is an air scrubber, and the use of PPEs, which are personal protective equipment, like those white suits with the mask, must be worn during the cleanup. So, but your first step is you want to, the emergency contractor, if you use him, the first thing he will guarantee is, hey, I can get somebody out here, get an environmentalist out here in the next day or so, because you want to get the process rolling. And you want to, your public adjuster, the first thing he's going to ask for, just like the first thing the health department asks for is a menu, the first thing a public adjuster will ask for is a certified copy of your insurance documents. Yeah, so the public adjuster will want to see the copy so he can find out the loss of use coverage and the limits. And if your whole structure, like if you have an elementary school or something like that, or an assisted living facility, and you have people that are at risk, you've got to feed these people. Otherwise, if you can't feed them, then you have to shut down your whole operation. There are state laws that you have to feed the kids, a certain amount of meals per day. You can't have the kids there the whole day without food. So you're going to lose a certain amount of money every day. So when you have insurance, you are obligated. One of your agreements with the insurance company is to mitigate any further losses. So that's why where a temporary kitchen comes in is, rather than losing $100,000 a month, you could rent a mobile kitchen and keep your operation going for $10,000 a month or $15,000 a month. If you add refrigeration, ramps, and other things like that. And your insurance provider is obligated by law to make you whole. So it's not a situation where you should try to look for lesser services with us. Rather than, you should call us and ask us for everything that you need, because that's how you want to start out. They're supposed to put you back to your pre-loss condition. I do have experience. I am certified for the water and for the fire, and I do have experience that I did mention with insurance estimating. I'm certified for Xactimate, which is an insurance estimating program. Now, contractors cannot operate as a public adjuster on the same claim. So that's why, even though the emergency service contractors kind of understand your policy, and they may, be able to take a look at it, but they can't advise you according to the law. They can't wear the two hats. They can get in big trouble and lose their license. So they have to be careful. That's why the use of a public adjuster is necessary. Now, many people ask about fire. The fire odor is a molecule. So, every molecule or human or microorganism has a molecular structure. So on the outside of our heads, for example, it's hard. So when you break that molecular structure, the hard part of the odor molecule, then the molecule breaks down. And this odor can drive people crazy and really do bad things. And I'm just using this nut as an illustration. So if this part of the odor molecule is amortized, there are machines and things and disinfectants and all kind of chemicals that you can launch airborne, or you can scrub and wipe off, that can break down, erode this outer portion of the shell. And then once, like a human, if you break my head open and my brain is laying all over the ground, eventually I will die. So the same as the odor molecule, if you break this down, then the odor dissipates. But on the blog post here underneath, it goes into more detail and a greater detail. There's a process of the first thing you want to do is remove the soot laden materials, and you can't do that until you go through the environmental phase. Again, if you have a large project, you can give us a call at 1-800-205-6106, Temporary Kitchens. Please support our blogs by sharing, liking, or subscribing on our social media accounts below. We really appreciate that support, because it's very time consuming to make, to do all this writing and